Silent strategy is rooted deep in history, but nothing reshapes modern warfare like the promise of unseen power and unheard engines. World War II American troops storm beaches and skies under thunderous fire, learning that surprise can mean life or death. This story begins not with radar or jet engines but with the simple hunger to see first, strike first, and survive long enough to tell the tale. In Letters Home from the Hedgerows of Normandy, American soldiers write of shadows and whispers, longing for advantage in a war fought across continents. They don't know it yet, but the seeds of stealth are already planted in their minds by every silent tread and every hidden foxhole. Imagine June 6, 1944, Omaha Beach, a place where bravery lives in every grain of sand and fear rises like the tide. American soldiers climb out of landing craft into a storm of bullets and steel, and they fight not for glory but to save brothers beside them. What if those brave men could approach unseen, unheard, untouched by the first blast? What if that unseen advantage could save thousands? Stealth technology feels like science fiction today, but its roots spring from real desperate questions on real battlefields. And this journey from dusty foxholes to radar-defying aircraft changes everything. In 1943, the Allies master radar and integrate it into every layer of defense, from England to the beaches of Sicily. Radar is the silent eye that sweeps the skies, and it's the enemy of surprise. American engineers push forward with electronic warfare, jamming signals, and learning how to hide aircraft by altering echoes. In Letters from Pilots flying night missions over Europe, you hear the tension. Lieutenant James Walker writes home to his wife Marie on March 7, 1944, "Every night we climb into the dark, hoping the sky stays blind." That phrase stays with every airman who reads those words. Across the Pacific, the U.S. Navy faces a vast ocean where surprise reigns supreme. In the coral and saltwater, the Japanese and American fleets seek hidden advantage in a war of carriers and destroyers. Admiral William Halsey, Admiral Chester Nimitz, and countless sailors learn that information guarantees victory. But information can be wrong, and that danger forces innovation. Enter a program you've probably heard in whispers, the Manhattan Project. Hidden in secrecy, guarded by silence, brilliant minds race to unlock power beyond anything the world has seen. General Leslie Groves writes about the pressure in his diary on June 12, 1944, "The weight of secrecy crushes us like iron on bone." That same secrecy teaches the world how to hide power, not just build it. And while the Manhattan Project rages, American engineers examine another problem: how to make aircraft invisible to radar. By 1944, the Army Air Forces know that radar can detect heavy bombers from miles away. So they experiment with shapes and materials to scatter radio waves into the void. They test in wind tunnels at Wright Field near Dayton, Ohio, watching how radio energy dances off metal. It's slow work, full of trial and error, but every test adds a piece to the puzzle. Meanwhile, American soldiers on the ground in Europe adapt camouflage and concealment like art. They paint vehicles with unpredictable patterns, dig hides beneath hedgerows, and whisper secrets to avoid detection. Private First Class Robert Jenkins writes home on August 2, 1944, "We are ghosts in these fields, fading into brush and shadow." His words mirror the ancient desire to be unseen until the moment of decisive action. But real stealth in the electromagnetic age waits for another decade, after the Second World War ends. When peace comes in 1945, the world carries scars and souls crushed by war. American soldiers return home to quiet towns, hugging children and writing letters heavy with memory. Colonel Claire Chennault, leader of the Flying Tigers, speaks about future air combat: "We must learn not only to fly but to disappear." His words echo into the Cold War and beyond. In the late 1940s, Bell Aircraft and other firms experiment with radar cross-section and swept wings. It's not yet the dramatic shapes you imagine, but the science grows quietly in labs and on test ranges. Engineers and scientists collaborate across military branches, all chasing the same question: can machines become invisible to the watchful eye of radar? Their research combines physics and mathematics, metal and plasma, sound and silence. But nothing accelerates stealth like conflict and fear of the unknown. By the early 1960s, the U.S. Air Force begins Project Harvey to build an aircraft that can penetrate the densest defenses without detection. Engineers work in secrecy at Groom Lake, a place whisper thin on maps but heavy with dreams of silent flight. They test shapes that scatter radar like pebbles skipping across a pond. And as jets roar overhead in Europe and Asia, the need for stealth becomes urgent. Vietnam rages, and American pilots face integrated air defenses that can track and destroy without warning. Major John Boyd, a fighter pilot and strategist, argues that energy and maneuver matter, but so does not being seen at all. His briefings on maneuver warfare influence generations of thinkers who believe that unseen advantage equals survival. By 1976, Lockheed Skunk Works unveils an aircraft that looks like no other, the F-177. It hums quietly, its facete shape bending radar waves into shadows. Pilots whisper its name with reverence and awe. At night it slips into enemy airspace while defenses search for echoes that never return. But before that moment, every bit of knowledge grew slowly from the sacrifice, sweat, and courage of those who fought in World War II. From the hedgerows of Normandy to the open Pacific, every silent step teaches the value of being unseen until the decisive strike looms. And so the F-117 isn't born in a vacuum. Its story traces back to the raw, hard lessons of World War II, where American soldiers and airmen confront the limits of visibility and the brutal calculus of survival. Every D-Day landing, every night bombing raid over Germany, every patrol across the Pacific teaches a simple but terrifying truth: the side that sees first often lives to fight another day. The F-117, with its angular surfaces and radar-defying coating, is the technological descendant of those lessons, a tool that turns invisibility into tactical dominance. By the early 1980s, pilots begin training in total secrecy. The airstrip at Tonopah Test Range becomes a shadowy crucible where technology and human courage merge. Test flights occur under blackened skies, with no press and almost no public acknowledgement. Engineers and pilots work side by side, refining radar-absorbent materials, tweaking flight profiles, and mapping every conceivable angle that could give away the aircraft to enemy sensors. Lieutenant Colonel Ken Kenny Collins recalls in an oral history interview, "You learn to trust the machine, but more importantly, you learn to trust that your plan and your training will keep you invisible when it counts." Meanwhile, the world outside remains largely unaware. In the geopolitical chess game of the late Cold War, stealth promises a new kind of deterrence. The Soviets develop increasingly sophisticated radar networks, but the F-117 slips past detection in ways conventional aircraft never could. Its first combat test in Panama during Operation Just Cause demonstrates a paradigm shift. A precision strike can occur in complete secrecy, reshaping how commanders plan and execute operations. Major General William H. Tunner, in debriefings years later, notes that the psychological impact of being unseen is as decisive as the physical strike itself. American airmen begin to understand that stealth is not just about hardware. It's about planning, coordination, and discipline. Every mission involves precise timing, careful navigation, and an awareness that detection, even momentary, could compromise the entire operation. In a diary entry from a pilot during the Gulf War in 1991, he writes, "We fly like ghosts over the desert. One wrong move and the illusion ends, but every mission we return unseen, and the sense of control is indescribable." The Gulf War cements stealth as a strategic cornerstone. F-117s fly deep into Baghdad, hitting critical command and communication nodes with surgical precision. Iraqi radar installations light up in confusion, often reporting phantom contacts that never materialize. American forces marvel at the operational advantage stealth provides, not just in firepower but in information dominance. Commanders can shape the battlefield before the enemy even knows the fight has begun. Yet behind every successful sortie lies decades of painstaking research, lessons learned from soldiers crawling through mud in Europe, sailors navigating invisible reefs in the Pacific, and airmen dodging flak over Germany and Vietnam. Stealth also inspires a generation of engineers and tacticians to push boundaries further. The development of the B-2 Spirit bomber extends the principles of low observability to strategic payloads, combining long-range reach with near-total invisibility to enemy sensors. Test pilots recount the eeriness of flying aircraft that seem to vanish from every instrument, a reminder that human courage and machine ingenuity must coexist. Air Force manuals from the 90s emphasize mission planning as much as aerodynamic design, highlighting that stealth is both an art and a science. Yet the legacy of World War II is never far from these high-tech triumphs. Letters from veterans, preserved in archives, describe moments where being unseen meant survival. A private in Normandy writes, "We crouched in the hedge, hearts pounding, waiting for the shells to pass. Sometimes being invisible is all that keeps you alive." Those words echo across decades, linking the foxholes and beaches of Europe to the desert skies over Iraq and the test ranges of Nevada. The courage of ordinary Americans under extraordinary pressure forms the moral backbone of stealth strategy. Technology can hide, but it cannot replace the bravery required to act while unseen. And now, as we look toward the future, the story of stealth continues to evolve. Hypersonic vehicles, unmanned aerial systems, and electronic warfare all promise new layers of invisibility. The lessons of World War II, improvised camouflage, careful reconnaissance, the value of surprise, remain relevant, informing the design of aircraft and strategy alike. The intersection of human ingenuity and technological advancement shapes a battlefield where being unseen can determine not just victory, but survival itself. Young engineers at modern Air Force labs often study the meticulous experiments at Wright Field and the first clandestine flights at Groom Lake, drawing inspiration from pioneers who dared to make the impossible possible. But as every American soldier, sailor, and airman knows, invisibility is never absolute. Radar, satellite reconnaissance, and cyber detection evolve continuously. Stealth is a cat-and-mouse game, where each new defense spawns a new countermeasure. The story of unseen power is ongoing, a race that began with desperate men in foxholes and landing craft, carried forward by engineers in secret labs, and played out across the skies of Iraq, Serbia, and beyond. Every mission, every test flight, every study of radar scattering teaches the same enduring lesson. Survival and success often depend on what the enemy cannot see, hear, or anticipate. As night falls over modern test range, an F-35 lifts silently from the runway, its surfaces absorbing radar and scattering detection. It embodies decades of learning, every rivet and contour tribute to the soldiers who first dreamed of unseen advantage. But beyond the machines, the stories, the letters, and the experiments, there remains a question every strategist must face. What happens when stealth meets the next innovation, the next threat, the next war? What do unseen warriors face in skies yet untested, in fields yet unconquered? The answer lies just over the horizon, waiting, and it promises a revelation that will challenge everything we thought we knew about modern warfare. The shadows of history stretch forward, whispering that the next strike, the next invisible move, could change everything. And in that silence, the world waits, holding its breath, for the moment when stealth is no longer just an advantage, but the difference between victory and disaster.